The water is alive with green-black leeches, sometimes half a foot long, that slither under the fatigues or siphon blood right through them.
Oh, damn, he's sucking from both ends.
The patrol is met halfway by two boys selling Pepsi for 50 cents a can, proving that the Vietnamese are getting the hang of capitalism and that the patrol lacks the element of surprise. Soldiers become wary when the boys fail to appear. That could mean an ambush is waiting for them. A man is questioned. According to the rules, he is not a Viet Cong if he can produce an ID card.
No sweat.
Take a pop, son.
Yeah.
No sweat.
There is sporadic firing ahead. Lieutenant Tom Davis is unable to learn whether it's VC or a friendly ARVN force maneuvering up there. Either way, it would be foolhardy to work forward for a closer look, and so the patrol is cut short. Each grunt has a story to tell about occasions when the ARVN have opened fire on Americans by mistake.
Gold stars and cod liver oil. Introduction. Several years ago, I began looking into Vermilion's war casualties of a yesteryear at the behest of late Vermilionite John Vargo. While I am a war veteran, or rather because of it, it's highly unlikely that I'd have pursued the subject on my own, because it's an ugly business any way you cut it. Nonetheless, I'm glad Mr. Vargo asked for the information, because these things didn't happen to someone else. They happened to us. And we would do well to know, remember, and never forget it. Consider it to be a little dose of cod liver oil for the hometown soul. All in all, there are over 26 persons included in this survey. Not all of them were residents, but are included because they either married a native Vermilionite or spent a good deal of time in the town during what in many cases were their short lifetimes. As a good nurse would not have anyone drink the entire bottle of cod liver oil in one sitting, these brief extracts of history will be given only in small doses, as needed. Gold stars in Vermilion. During the First World War, American mothers who had family members serving their country wore a blue star around their left arm. As the conflict progressed and the number of dead escalated, mothers wanted to express their loss. A suggestion was made of sewing a gold star over the blue star. The idea was presented to President Woodrow Wilson, and the practice was adopted in 1918. A bold headline in the February 6, 1919 edition of the Vermilion News, reporting the death of Private First Class George Faisley in France, read, "Vermilion's fifth gold star." The count, at that time, included another WW1 casualty, Archie Birch, as well as Vermilion Civil War casualties. But as generous as it was to include the men lost in the Civil War, albeit retroactively, for gold star status, it was in error. For in fact, PFC Faisley was Vermilion's seventh. The first was Private Eugene Frankenberg. He was but 20 years old when he became a part of the 72nd Ohio Infantry. A member of the family told me, the sad truth is that he did not want to serve in the Army and ran away and was caught in Port Clinton. Afterward, he was sent to Mississippi, where he was captured by rebel forces on the 11th of June, 1864. He was interred at the infamous Andersonville prison camp in Ripley, Missouri. Starving and suffering with a terrible case of diarrhea, he died on the 28th of September, 1864. He was only 21. The second star was Private John Riblet. Note, in some places he is erroneously listed as being a major. Private Riblet enlisted in the Union Army on the 5th of August, 1862, at the age of 26. He was killed at Utoy Creek, Georgia, on the 6th of August, 1864. Utoy Creek was part of the Atlanta campaign. The third star was Captain Henry Delker. Captain Delker was a member of the 41st Regiment of the Ohio Volunteer Infantry. During the last minutes of the Battle of Nashville, December 12th through 16, 1864, he was seriously wounded in the left arm and side. Though he survived the war, the bullet that wounded him on the battlefield had never been removed. It finally felled him in late December 1890. While he was originally an Amherst, Brownhelm native, after the war he lived and ran a popular dry goods store in Vermilion. The local chapter of the GAR Veterans Organization was named after him. The fourth star was an 18-year-old Army private by the name of Michael Delker, whose home was in Brownhelm. Michael enlisted in the Union Army on the 26th of February, 1864. He was the second oldest son in a family of 9. His father, Jacob, was born in Baden, Germany, and was a farmer. His older brother, Henry, previously mentioned, was also in the Army. Michael never lived to be 19. He was killed at Pickett's Mills, Georgia, on the 27th of May, 1864. The fifth star, also a Brownhelm native, was Private Thomas Gallaudet Wells, who enlisted in the Union Army as a private on the 11th of June, 1861, at the age of 20 years. He was killed on the 14th of September, 1862, at South Mountain, Maryland. The Battle of South Mountain was fought on the mountain at Crampton's, Fox and Turner's Gaps during the Maryland campaign in 1862. Wells is generally believed killed at the Battle of Antietam. However, the Antietam campaign didn't begin until April 16th of 1862, 2 days after his death. Well, methinks that's quite enough literal cod liver oil for now. Keep in mind that these snippets do not reflect the enormity of the sacrifices made by these men nor their families, not by a long shot.
Get your gun.
After nearly a half-century of relative peace in the world, the exception being the Spanish-American War of 1898, American President Woodrow Wilson had had enough of German Kaiser Wilhelm II, and on April 6, 1917 asked Congress for what some would term a war to end all wars, one that would make the world safe for democracy. They approved. On Friday, July 13, 1917, the Sandusky Star-Journal reported, 4 Vermilion boys, who are members of Company G of the 5th Ohio Regiment, have been ordered to report at Norwalk on Sunday and expect to see service in France. Among them was a young man named Archie Birch. At the time, Archie, like his father Cassius, was a fisherman. He worked for Vermilion's Southwest Fish Company and lived with his family on State Street. He had just turned 22 years of age. He would never be 24. A little over a year later, on September 29, 1918, he lost his life while fighting with American expeditionary forces in the Meuse-Argonne-Ypres defensive sector in France. It was the very last day of the siege. Private Birch was Vermilion's first casualty of the war. Unfortunately, he would not be the last. George Feistley came of age on a nice farm just a few miles south of Vermilion, near the busy corner of Vermilion, Savannah, and Mason Roads, in a place called Axtell, Ohio. Like Archie Birch, he was also 22 years old when he bid farewell to his father John and mother, Grace, and joined the U.S. Army. That was on the 20th of September in 1917. He never saw them again. Until the 1st of March of 1918, he served with Company K of the 329th Infantry and was promoted to the rank of Private First Class. On the 1st of August of that same year, he was assigned to the 3rd Machine Gun Battalion of Company A. Wounded during the Battle of Saint-Mihiel, Meuse-Argonne in mid-September. He died of those wounds on the 10th day of October. A favorite of his teachers and classmates at Vermilion High, where he had graduated with the class of 1913, a gold star was placed on the alumni service flag on the wall at the school in his memory. He is buried in Ardennes, France. Though the war ended at the end of June in 1919, President Wilson's desire that it be a war to end all wars was not but a pipe dream. 22 years later, the world was once again at war in Europe and Japan, and once again young men would leave their families in Vermilion and elsewhere, some never to return, only to be remembered by a glistening gold star placed in the window of their family home and a tear in their mother's eye.
Send the word everywhere. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
Here is the news. Japan's long-threatened aggression in the Far East began tonight with air attacks on United States naval bases in the Pacific. Fresh reports are coming in every minute. The latest facts of the situation are these. Messages from Tokyo say that Japan has announced a formal declaration of war against both the United States and Britain. The Japanese air raids were made on the Hawaiian Islands and the Philippines. Observers' reports say that an American battleship has been hit and that a number of the Japanese bombers have been shot down. A naval action is in progress off Honolulu, and American transport with timber on board has been torpedoed in the Pacific, and another cargo ship is reported in distress. President Roosevelt has told the Army and Navy to act on their secret orders, has called a meeting of ministers, and is preparing a report for Congress.
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that the state of war between the United States and the government of Germany, which has thus been thrust upon the United States, is hereby formally declared, and the President is hereby authorized and directed to employ the entire naval and military forces of the United States and the resources of the government to carry on war against the government of Germany, and, to bring the conflict to a successful termination, all of the resources of the country are hereby pledged by the United States Congress. Sam Rayburn, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Henry A. Wallace, Vice President of the United States and President of the Senate. Approved December 11, 1941.
In the mid-1950s, when the local chapter of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, was formed, it was named the Holland Bond Post 7576 in honor of brothers Patrick and Michael Holland and William F. Bond. All lost their lives during World War II. While it's certainly entertaining, not to mention an educational experience, to ramble down memory lane with all the pictures, letters, and other materials made available to me, it could also be a melancholy endeavor. I'm sometimes inclined to think that perhaps such things would be better if lost and forgotten. But then again, no. Here are some notes on Vermilion's killed in actions. First, U.S. Navy torpedoman, mate, second class, Patrick Holland, son of Mrs. J. T. Holland of Darrow Road, Vermilion, Ohio, had been in the U.S. Navy for 13 years. While serving aboard a Mosquito boat, that's a PT, a small high-speed warship designed for torpedo attacks in coastal waters, he was reported missing on February 10, 1943, near the Solomon Islands. Never found. He became Vermilion's first casualty of the war. He was 36 years old. His brother was lost in another incident. U.S. Navy Chief Torpedoman Michael Holland, following in his older brother's footsteps, was a 12-year Navy veteran. He spent 10 of those years in the torpedo division. In November of 1942, he graduated from a submarine base in Rhode Island and left the States in December. Just 10 days following the receipt of a telegram informing his mother of the death of his older brother, Michael's wife, Eileen, and their 2 children of Huron, Ohio, received notice that the 28-year-old sailor was also missing in action. Both men were later listed as being buried at sea. Both Michael and Patrick were born in Lorraine, but moved to Vermilion Township around 1918 and attended school in Vermilion. Michael had served 4 years in the area of China. His brother Patrick served there 8 years. The men were 2 of a family of 15 children. Their father had passed on a few years prior to their demise. Private First Class William F. Bond died on the battlefields of France on 27 November 1944 of wounds he had received the previous day. Very few details regarding his death were recorded. Billy, as folks knew him around town, was born in Vermilion May 3, 1924, and was a student in Vermilion High School up to his senior year. He entered the service on February 8, 1943, and trained at Camp Kane, Mississippi. He left this country early in May and spent a considerable time in England before he went to France and was killed. I have all his letters he wrote home from France during the war, and I have that last letter that he wrote home to his parents. It was just after Thanksgiving, and he was really, really happy because he had had a real good Thanksgiving dinner, and he just got a new pair of boots. And boy, it was just a great time. He was only 20 years old. Sometime previous, I wrote that World War II started in 1937 when Germany invaded Poland. In fact, the German invasion of Poland didn't occur until September 1st, 1939. But any way you cut it, the U.S. option to enter the conflict following the bombing of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii was Hobson's choice. And when the dust finally settled over the world in the summer of 1945, there were 13 empty places at dining room tables in the vicinity of Vermilion, Ohio. Aside from the two Holland brothers and Billy Bond, the war had directly stolen the lives of 8 additional Vermilion men. Private Russell G. Davidson, he was killed in Italy in late January of 1944. Private Michael Darvis was cut down on a Normandy beach on 7 June 1944 and was the posthumous recipient of the Purple Heart and Silver Star. Private First Class Ben W. Henkel was killed in France on 12 August 1944 and was awarded the Purple Heart with oak leaf cluster. Private John Gima was killed while fighting in Germany on 24 November 1944. Private George Mize gave his life in Italy on 12 May 1944. Marine Lieutenant Elmer Linebaugh of Amherst or Brownhill was killed in a plane crash while training for combat at Cherry Point, North Carolina on 16 June 1944. Private Richard N. Floyd was killed on July 7, 1944, during the American drive on St. Louis during the Normandy invasion. Private First Class Elmer C. Miller of Brownhill died of wounds received in Luxembourg on 17 January 1945 during the Battle of the Bulge. Staff Sergeant Russell Baderstock was killed in action on January 15, 1945 in Belgium. While the sergeant was a Lorraine native, he was married to a well-known Vermilion girl named Evelyn Lighthizer, who was making her home in town while her husband was in the service. Private James Francis Judge was killed in October 1945 in the vicinity of Oberndorf, Germany. Initially, he worked as a ground crew mechanic in England for 14 months. In February of 1945, he volunteered for duty with the 359th Infantry of Patton's Third Army and was sent to fight in Germany. While advancing well ahead of his company through a wooded area, he routed 3 enemies from their positions, killing 1 and wounding the remaining 2. As he moved on, he encountered 2 more of the enemy and pinned them down with accurate rifle fire. When a machine gun opened fire on him, and at the risk of his life, he returned to his squad under intense fire to obtain a bazooka. Although wounded, he led a bazooka man over the same hazardous route, and by directing effective rocket fire, destroyed the machine gun nest. He was later killed by sniper fire. On December 12, 1945, his mother, Mrs. Loretta Judge, was presented a Silver Star. Were 13 gold stars not enough, there was a final casualty. Private First Class Jacob J. Karchy enlisted in the U.S. Army in Toledo, Ohio on 14 October 1942. He served in the 31st Infantry Regiment, 83rd Division. He was badly wounded during the Normandy invasion at Cherbourg in 1944. After 22 days of intense fighting, he was hit in the back on a phosphorus smoke shell burst a few feet behind him. He was later struck by a piece of shrapnel. There was some doubt at that time that he would ever walk again. He was hospitalized for a long time in both France and the United States. After his hospitalization at Cryle Veterans Hospital in Cleveland, Ohio, he tried to work, but never fully recovered. He was honorably discharged from service in 1945, receiving several decorations for bravery in combat, including the Purple Heart and Bronze Star. Constantly in pain, in early April of 1947, he took his own life. He was 31 years old. By that time, the world was again on the verge of enjoying a period of relative peace and prosperity. This business of war, oddly enough, seemed to have helped us dig our way out of the Great Economic Depression. Perhaps some have thought humanity finally understood what Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman meant when he said, "War is hell." A few folks apparently understood what the residual effects of victory in Europe and the Pacific would be, and fewer still had ever heard of the 38th parallel, much less an exotic country on the Indochina Peninsula in Southeast Asia called Vietnam. But that would change. Gold stars, gold stars, gold stars. Korea. Following the surrender of Japan in September of 1945, U.S. authorities divided the peninsula along the 38th parallel. Soviet forces occupied the area north of the line and U.S. forces the south. After free elections failed to establish a unified government in 1948, the nation became increasingly divided politically. South of the line, a right-wing type of government was established. The North preferred communist rule. Reunification talks started and stalled. Tensions increased. Then, on the 25th day of June in 1950, North Korea invaded the South, and the Korean War, that was never really a war, but a police action, had begun. The Korean War, often referred to as the Forgotten War, because it has been overshadowed by more immediate memories of Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. But it was no less bitter or difficult than any. Over 50,000 American lives were lost, and over 100,000 were wounded. And though a good number of Vermilion families tossed and turned in their beds until 27 July 1953, the day the fighting ceased, none, thankfully, had to place a gold star in their window. And then there was Vietnam. Like Korea, the conflict in Vietnam was not a declared war. In fact, the U.S. Congress has not declared any military action in which our nation has participated in a war since 1941. But as some say, a rose by any other name is still a rose. It was a war, and this time nearly 60,000 American lives were lost. 5 of them were from our area.
Good morning, Vietnam. It's just a smidgen past 5 after 6, and here we go with another day's version of the Dawn Buster Show from Armed Forces Radio. I'm Airman Adrian Cronauer, and for the next 4 hours, we've got the best in popular music for you here, so let's get started right now with music.
You keep saying you got something for me, something you call love, but confess you've been a messin' where you shouldn't have been a messin', and now someone else is getting all your best. These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Captain Fleming Brainerd III, whose home of record was Amherst, Ohio, was killed in action in Phu Bon Province, South Vietnam, on 26 May 1965. Captain Fleming was an infantry unit commander, Special Forces, and had been in the service for a decade. He was 31. Sergeant Theodore Davison Ward, D Company, 2nd Brigade, 7th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cav Division. Grew up in Midawanda, Ohio. He died from multiple fragmentation wounds received at Tay Ninh Province, South Vietnam, on 8 May 1969, just short of his 21st birthday. Sergeant John Lewis Katora was a member of C Company, 1st Battalion of the 22nd Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division, when he was seriously wounded by small arms fire at Binh Dinh Province, South Vietnam, in April 1970. He died in a hospital in Japan on 3 May 1970. He was 21. Second Lieutenant Matthew John Pachitis was a member of the USARV 1st Cavalry. While his home of record at his death was Columbus, Ohio, he grew up in Brownhill. Lieutenant Pachitis was accidentally killed in the Republic of South Vietnam on 10 January 1966. He was 23. Private First Class Hubert Jackson Payne was killed in action from multiple fragmentation wounds at Hill 1338, Ngoc Con Krinh, in Con Tom Province, South Vietnam, on 17 November 1967. He was a member of Company C, 12 Infantry, 4th Infantry Division. The 26-year-old soldier was brought home to Big Run Cemetery in Webster County, West Virginia. Vermilion's local AMVETS Post 22 is named in honor of Captain Brainerd, Sergeant Katora, and Sergeant Ward, and it certainly would have been nice if these were the last of Vermilion's military casualties, but they were not. On the day before Christmas in 2003, 9-year Army veteran Sergeant Benjamin Walter Biskey was killed along with 2 other soldiers when his vehicle struck an improvised explosive device on Highway 1 near Samarra, Iraq. He was a member of the 5th Engineer Battalion, 1st Engineer Brigade, out of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. He was 27. Sergeant Biskey was Vermilion's last Gold Star, but sadly enough, he is unlikely to be the last of all. As we pause this Memorial Day to remember those men of yesteryear, their families, and their sacrifices, we should also say a prayer for all the men and women who are currently in the service of our nation. The photo accompanying this monograph was captured during a Memorial Day celebration in Vermilion's Exchange Park just a few years ago. World War II Navy veteran Luther Marquette's salute to the flag as taps are played says everything I cannot. God bless America.